Hey everybody, welcome back to theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Again, that website address is theclinicaltrialsguru.com. You are listening to my podcast. Although if you are seeing the video of this version, it's because I strongly believe in the be everywhere philosophy that a lot of internet marketers, and the internet marketer has a bad connotation, but I really believe in that theory because I think people can find you anywhere. So this particular piece of content is made for and meant for an audio audience. But since YouTube is so big, YouTube is the second biggest search engine after Google, and it's owned by Google. I really think I'd be missing out if I didn't have this on YouTube. So anyways, this will be content for YouTube as well. So what I wanted to really talk about today was get to a few of your guys' questions. And today's kind of a slow day. The World Series is on, Boston versus St. Louis. From those of you watching from the future, I have very little interest in this particular World Series, since I'm an Angel fan, and if I had to choose a second team, I guess Padres. So very little interest in the Red Sox and Cardinals, but whatever, it's on in the background. You probably won't be hearing it, but in either case, let's get to some of your guys' questions. And if this is your first time tuning in, or your first time watching, or your first time discovering, thank you for checking out. theclinicaltrialsguru.com is the blog. So go there when you have some free time. I have 2 products that I sell on there, and I'm working on a third. So I have a DVD called The Introduction to Clinical Research, which is made for people who are working in the industry, who are just trying to learn, what a clinical trial is. It's a very useful tool for people looking to get into a career in this field, whether you're trying to work at a research site and you have very little previous experience with clinical trials. I try to put it all on this DVD to help you out. I have another one called How to Get More Studies for Your Research Clinic, because that would have been the product I would have bought 8 years ago when I got started in this. I wanted to know how to get studies. So I have it there for you, and soon to be a third DVD, How to Recruit Study Participants in Your Clinical Trials. So thank you for tuning in. Let's get right into your questions. And for those of you new viewers out there, and new listeners, new audience members, you can email me questions anytime. I will keep you anonymous unless you specifically want me to give you a shout out. So let's get into your questions. This one's, hello Dan, I purchased your Kindle Study Coordinator Manual. Oh yeah, so I have that as well. That's like $2.99 on Amazon Kindle. And also your DVD for ways to find new studies. Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. I've really found your information useful. We are a small site in a large family practice in Phoenix. We've been working together for 5 years and are starting to grow. But as you know, studies are difficult to come by sometimes. Yes, they are. I had one question about HIPAA requirements. We have a business contract with the practice, and I wanted to make sure that our access to patient charts was described accurately. How do we state this in the agreement? We review charts for potential subjects. So I don't know how your contract is worded with the family practice, but what I can say is, from my experience, because I'm kind of set up the same way. My company, South Coast Clinical Trials, is set up with a private practice that consists of some nurse practitioners, some psychiatrists. I don't allow the research staff to get into the medical records of someone unless they were referred by that physician or nurse practitioner after this person has expressed interest in a study. Then we have them fill out our pre-screening consent forms, HIPAA authorization, things like that. So it's a little extra step but HIPAA is definitely not something you want to play around with. You want to be extra cautious. It's very tempting to go through a private practice database and just start pre-screening and start calling people. But no, you cannot do that. One of the things you can do is let the provider, whether it's the physician, the nurse, whoever it is that the patients, whoever it is that is seeing the patients, tell them what you're looking for a particular study. Have them flag everyone who qualifies, and then the next time they come in for their appointment, have them bring up the topic of clinical research, and only if they express interest, then they can be referred to the research staff. So that's the way I would do it. You can, of course, I am not an attorney, but consult with an attorney in a situation like this. But from my experience, attorneys are always extremely cautious, and they'll probably give you similar advice. They normally are going to go the conservative route. I rarely go the conservative route. I'm a marketer, I'm a salesperson. But when it comes to HIPAA and things like patient privacy, you really don't want to cut corners. So I would go about it that way. Give the nurse, the doctor, whoever it is that has the private practice database, a list of the studies you have with an inclusion-exclusion criteria. Have them look at that when they see every single patient, and then if that patient that they're seeing at that moment qualifies, they can ask them, are you interested? If they say no, that's it. If they say yes, then they could be referred to one of your research staff. That's the way we do it at South Coast. That's the way I think you should do it. But again, I'm not an attorney, so check it out. But thank you for the question, and good luck with that. I go to Arizona a lot, so it'd be cool to be able to meet some of you guys sometimes. But good job, and I think that's the best way to have recruitment at your site is from a private practice. So add those add those physicians or nurse practitioners or whoever it is that has that private practice, add them as sub-investigators or PIs if you can. Good question. Here's another one. Hello, Dan. I've been following your blog for about 6 months. I have a phase 3 clinic in which we are comparing a new bronchodilator to placebo. Let's get to the question. I've been asked to derive a framework for the study budget and estimate the resource requirements, plus to translate these into personnel hours. Also, what other types of information is required to turn resource estimates into line item budget costs? I was wondering if you can help me out with these 2 questions. Just let me know what is expected from me, and the rest I'm sure I'll be able to figure out, especially the translation of resource requirement into personnel hours. Okay, so the first thing you want to do, I'm going to assume that you've never negotiated a budget before, so you have no costs. You have no cost to compare this to, okay? What I would do is get the protocol, get the schedule of assessments that it comes with, and go through every single line item and really meet with your PI, meet with your coordinator, meet with your nurses, meet with anyone who's going to be doing anything involved with that study. Phlebotomists, pharmacists, ECG technicians, everyone that can be possibly involved in the study, and go through each line item. And let's say it's an informed consent, and for this particular protocol they require the PI to discuss the informed consent. You will ask the PI, how much do you usually get per hour? An informed consent typically takes about an hour. You'll have your line item there, include 20% for overhead. Next, if you have a phlebotomy, if you need a blood draw for that particular visit, find out how many blood draws you need on that day. And we're going to go visit by visit. So find out how many blood draws you'll need at this particular visit. Find out how much it will cost you. Mark it up 20% for a premium. Find out how much an ECG will cost you. Find out how much time it will take, what you normally pay. Find out how long that visit will be for the study coordinator. figure out how many hours the study coordinator is going to need to be spending for that visit, and not just for the visit, but for the data entry after the visit and for queries after the visit. Factor in that time, add that into the budget for the study coordinator fee. Figure out who needs to do your physical, who can do your physical, find out how much that costs per hour, find out any other procedures. There's oftentimes rating scales for something like this where there's a bronchodilator, asthma trial. You're going to be looking at the equipment. You obviously need qualified personnel to operate these equipment. Factor in their time, factor in how long it's going to take. And I always include a 20 to 30% overhead for everything. And just do this. So there's no real easy way to do this except going through the protocol and going through every single procedure and coming up with a cost for that. And as you get more studies, you can start getting better at these things. It'll become easier for you to figure out, okay, an informed consent will cost this much. And figure out, some studies you're going to underestimate how much time you actually need, how much time is actually required. Oftentimes protocols get amended and the budgets are not necessarily amended, so you really need to be careful with this kind of stuff and make sure you plan ahead accordingly. Spend more time on this than you think is necessary. Calculate that it's going to take more time for you to do every procedure than it will. Calculate that it will cost more to perform every procedure than you think. And just start keeping a log of these costs so that when it's time to negotiate future budgets and future contracts, you'll be more prepared. Hopefully this helps. There's really no easy way to do that, but I hope that this can help you. Here's another question. Hi Dan, so what is it with Quintals and others not faxing lab reports anymore? This is a big issue for us as a site. They want to send them by email. In the past, they came by fax, and I had someone looking at them immediately and then taken to the PI. Now the coordinator has to find time in between patients to go into the email and look for them. Sometimes we don't even get to our email until late in the day. And what happens when the coordinator is traveling? I was traveling last week, and of course the email came to my coordinator specific email since it's my study. Well, that means I'm away from the office without a password and no one else can open it. Really, the concern is a lab sitting in my email until I have a chance to open and print it. What are your thoughts on this? I also think it's a very bad idea. From the 10 or so studies that I'm working on, most of them still fax things in, which is good, especially lab results, ECG results as well. I have yet to work on a study where lab results are just emailed in, and I would really hope that they're emailed to the PI, the coordinator, the sub-I. In your case, it sounds like they're just being emailed to you, and you're a coordinator, and then when you're away, let's say at an investigator meeting or something, no one's looking at the lab results. That's definitely bad. What I would do is immediately call your monitor, call your CRA, and have your CRA add your PI and your sub-I and a backup coordinator for purposes like this. I really hope that this will not be a trend going forward as far as emailing rather than faxing. But let's face it, fax is a really old technology. I'm still surprised it's stayed this long. So we may be facing something that's inevitable, but the answer to that would be having more people receiving access to these lab results. Because under your rationale, which I agree with, when you're out of town, if they're faxed, at least someone will get them and take them to the PI, as opposed to if they're just emailed and you're not there, then you have to forward it, and you're not supposed to forward your password to anyone. So that's a huge issue as far as electronic signatures are concerned from the FDA's perspective. So you really want more than one person having access and receiving the email. So I would immediately get 5 other people on this, if you have that many people, or at least the PI and a backup coordinator for yourself. Or if you have a receptionist at the office, um, add the receptionist to receive the emails, the lab results. But I think this might be something that we're going to have to deal with going forward. But from my experiences, and this is too late 2013, I'm all my studies are still faxing, and they always mail hard copies later. And that goes for ECGs too. When we transmit the ECGs, they're emailed, but they're also faxed. So if you're working on a study where they're only emailing, then I would get other people access so that they can receive the emails as well, especially when you're gone or you're sick or whatever the case may be. I know that some IRBs are, instead of mailing safety reports, which like SAEs, let's say an SAE occurs for your study at another site, the IRB usually sends these SAE reports to all the sites so that the PIs can be informed and know what's going on at other sites for this study. Now those are being emailed, and I don't think PIs have that much time to like log into their emails and manage like a bazillion passwords. And faxing and mailing the hard copies is a much better alternative, but it looks like the IRBs are even moving towards email. So in this case, you're going to need more people to have access to these emails. And I don't know. We'll see how it goes in the industry. I'm not a fan of this, but again, technology changes and we need to adapt. Let me see if I got any other questions. I got a bunch, but I want to find one good one. And if there's no more questions that I can find, I will actually can't find the question I was looking for. I wanted to read a news story to you as we wrap up. And so apparently, no, I know I had a good question for you guys. Oh, yes. There was one question. I remember it now, on data entry and EDC, electronic data capture. So for those of you who don't know, these EDC things, they can get very, very cumbersome. And there's so many different platforms, and your PI or your PIs, depending on how many studies they conduct, have to have a separate password and a separate link for every study, even if the study uses the same platform. For example, let's say I'm a PI and I have like 5 studies and they all use metadata or they all use Rave. I have to have 5 separate passwords and 5 separate links to access these electronic data capture systems. And for a PI to have to do these things, I mean, we know how busy these guys and gals are who are PIs, and they're expected to have the e-signatures, and they're supposed to be keeping an eye on queries and keeping an eye on how their study coordinators or data entry personnel are entering data. I really think there needs to be a better way and a more seamless way to enter data and to have PIs sign or even answer queries, even from a study coordinator perspective. Today, I was doing like 100 queries for a study that we're trying to close out, and because I don't want to put my study coordinators on a study that's not enrolling subjects, so I was doing it today. And I mean, they are very, very cumbersome, and some of the steps that you have to go to answer a query need to be repeated like a dozen times. For instance, today I had to answer the same query for like 20 subjects, and answering the query took about 6 steps for each query, and I had to do it for every single subject. So these things can get very tedious. I wish there was just a standard EDC company. I know competition is good and we should have a diversity, but I think they should have standards as far as like just like sites have SOPs. So in a process of informed consent is virtually similar at any study. I think having something for data entry, regardless of the vendor or the platform that you use, should be something that sponsors start demanding now when they're looking for vendors, and having to do the same training for every single EDC platform or vendor that you use is ridiculous. I think we should spend less time learning how to use these EDC systems and more time actually doing the study. So a lot of the time that we're spending, at least me personally, is spent working with a platform that I shouldn't have to be doing. I mean, that's not clinical research at that point. That's more like IT, tech support type stuff. And it's just something that I had an issue with today, and I know I've been getting dozens of emails from people out there, study coordinators and PIs who are frustrated with this. So let me know your guys' thoughts on that. EDC systems and how they should be, I guess, standardized for everyone else. But anyways, that will wrap up this particular podcast or video, depending on how you're watching. I want to give my clinical trial guru producers a shout out. That's Sarah Elizabeth Siegler, Resolve Research Solutions, Accurate Clinical Trials, Erdhart Clinical Trials, PTNR, Patrick Stone, Darshan Kulkarni, Biopharm Systems, Zymewire, Mozio, South Coast Clinical Trials, Breakthrough Clinical Trials, St. Paul Medical Research Center, Investigators Research Group, and Phlebotomy Services. So thank you to the Clinical Trial Guru producers. If you're interested in being a guru producer, let me know. It's $99, a lifetime membership. I'm only accepting 100, and that's it. That is it. Thank you guys, and stay tuned for more videos and podcasts. This is Dan from theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Take care.